somehow this movie did not land on the like 100 must-see horror movie list that I found last year, but I think it should be on there. And the fact that I am just now seeing it in the year 2021 is kind of crazy. But My Bloody Valentine from 1981, the infamous minor 49er slasher film. One that I vividly remember the trailer for My Bloody Valentine 3D kind of surfacing all over like the internet and also on TV. It being a pretty like successful movie, right? I mean, I wasn't aware of the original, but I do specifically recount seeing the like 3D pickaxe being thrown on like the advertisements and the previews and the commercials and so on and so forth, and I was like, dude, that movie looks badass. Never saw the remake, but I did see the original, and my expectations were not sky high, but this is an early 80s slasher that has a cult following and garnered a remake, so it's got to have some sort of merit. It's got to be at least quality in some way, right? I mean, it is a Canadian slasher for what that's worth, and it was made in 1981, so it's kind of, you can say maybe the height of the slasher craze, or also towards the very beginning. So maybe, is it following in the footsteps of Friday the 13th? Is it trailblazing for the Slumber Party Massacres and the sleepaway camps of the world? I don't know. That's kind of up to your interpretation. But yeah, it takes place on an island, or I guess a Canadian town called like Valentine Bluffs, which is a coal mining town in Canada. I don't know what part of Canada, but it's in Canada, so that's cool. It's not an American slasher. Although, if you were to tell me it was made in like, I don't know, southeastern USA, I probably would have believed you. Most of the characters, save for the main character, TJ, I think his name is, none of them really have Canadian accents, but TJ has a really fucking thick Canadian accent, I will admit. But it's basically the story of good old Harry Warden, who is among a group of people who were trapped in a mine shaft, working, because that is the main source of income for this town, right? So everybody works in the mines. And there's a big Valentine's Day party every year. Shocker, this town's called Valentine Bluff. And so everybody leaves, or a few people leave the mines early to get ready for the party, and they don't account for all of the people in the mines that didn't go to the party, and they like don't check the gas levels or whatever, and there ends up being a big explosion, and the miners get trapped, and I think there's 5 of them down there, and they finally dig through all the rubble after like forever, like weeks or whatever, and it turns out the only person left surviving was Harry Warden, who was only able to survive because he cannibalized and ate the other men in the shaft. So Harry Warden, there's that infamous scene of him screaming whenever he's found by like the police officers with like the human leg in his mouth, or he's eating the human leg. But yeah, so that's the backstory for Harry Warden, who is presumed to be the killer, right, for like the entirety of the movie. And I was of the belief that he was also the killer, because it's kind of a pretty typical origin story. He goes off to a mental hospital or whatever, and after that tragedy, the town bans the party. They vote to never do it again, and then boom, 20 years later, it starts happening again. They finally are like, all right, let's do this. It's been 20 years. Let's get the party going, and it's been 20 years since that happened. Nothing surely we'll learn from our mistakes. We won't fuck up again. Let's just have a good time. Let's make some money for the town. And then, the calling card for like Harry Warden and for like the violence is these human hearts that are in these boxes of chocolates, which is kind of cool, I guess. It's kind of unique, and I will say it is kind of cool to have a movie centered around like Valentine's Day as the premise, because it's kind of unique. It's not really something you see a lot. I mean, maybe you can attribute that to the early 80s slasher cliche of just having like New Year's Evil, Christmas Evil, frickin' Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine. I mean, Graduation Day. You could pencil it in there, but I do think that this one definitely sticks out from the crowd. I particularly enjoy the scene of the suspenseful lady getting like stalked in the laundromat, and then the next day they find her body in the dryer. How the dryer was able to run overnight for like 8 hours straight, I don't know, but it's pretty grotesque seeing her body all like burnt and fried, literally. Whenever they like open it and see her, it's a pretty fucked up and pretty disturbing sequence there. One thing I will say, and it's really too bad, and I guess it's just a sign of the times. The MPAA literally hacked this movie to bits, which was interesting because it was made in Canada, right? Like Nova Scotia. And so the fact that they had to like suppress so much of the violence was kind of unfortunate, and maybe things were a little bit stricter in Canada. I'm not exactly sure, but I mean it was heavily censored, and it avoided an X rating, obviously, because if you're going to try and make your movie commercially viable, you can't have it as an X-rated movie because it's not going to get a wide theatrical release. But I mean, good God, this movie the kills are just not good. I mean, and it sucks because there are some moments where I can tell a girl's going to get like impaled on a hook, or somebody gets decapitated, or just hacked to death with a pickaxe, and it just cuts it out. And I mean, I can tell that it was later in the production process, because they weren't able to reshoot the movie. And I mean, like, there had to have been at least like 5 to 10 minutes cut out, because like, it wasn't even like that they reshot the death scenes without as much violence. They just completely cut it out. And it's hard for me to try and dock the movie for that, because I'm sure you can find the uncensored cut of the movie somewhere. I didn't see it. I saw the censored version. I saw the version that pretty much everybody's seen. And it is unfortunate that you can't really see the uncensored version, and I would love to see it because I'm sure the death scenes are awesome. But I believe, I don't know if there's some sort of like controversy between them trying to restore the movie or not. I don't know. And maybe if there's like the Blu-ray release, perhaps some of the uncut sequences are in there. I don't know. That'd be kind of cool. I would love to see if that is the case. But anyway, yeah, the death scenes, they certainly would be slasher fare, and they are. But unfortunately, the MPAA said "fuck no, baby," and so the kills, as much as they really are a huge component of a slasher movie, they're just not really up to par. But it's not necessarily My Bloody Valentine's fault. I can't dock it too much for that. But I will say the killer itself, Harry Warden, pretty badass, right? It's not too often where there's a killer with this fancy of a getup. You have your Michael Myers, you have your Jason Voorhees, the mask, and so on and so forth. But this guy, not only does he wear this cool ass gas mask that is legitimately intimidating, but he also has a fucking pickaxe, which is cool. He does use other, instruments to kill, but it's a fucking freaky freaky fucking villain. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I mean, it is definitely one of my favorite slasher movie antagonists. I would say. As far as the characters, TJ has an epic Canadian accent, but none of them really strike me as all that interesting. I didn't really enjoy a lot of the, the fun, goofy aspects that you get in maybe like a camp slasher like The Burning, where it's legitimately like a fun summer movie. I did really enjoy the one guy. I think his name was Hollis, maybe, or Howard. I'm not sure. It's been about a week since I watched this, admittedly, but he has the epic mustache. I fucking love that guy. He looks like William Howard Taft or something, because they all work in the mines or whatever, but there's a scene where they're all working and his mustache is just covered in soot. It's so funny. But anyway, the climax of the movie, why they decide to move their Valentine's Day party into the mines, kind of ridiculous. Like, I get it, there's like a recreation room, whatever, but at a certain point, and this is February in Canada, in a mine hundreds of feet underground, they decide, yeah, let's have a party down there. And they wonder why they all get killed. They deserve to get killed with something so stupid, such a stupid fucking the premise is dumb. Like, I don't understand that. But at the end of the day, the mines themselves, the atmosphere and the setting is pretty fucking cool. It's creepy, and I think that it makes for a fantastic place to finish off your horror movie. Now, there is the big reveal that Harry Warden is not the killer. At least we don't believe it to be the killer. It is actually this character named Axel, who was in a love triangle throughout the whole movie between TJ and Sarah. So it was TJ and Sarah and Axel. Right, so Axel had come back. He was previously in a relationship with Sarah. I hope I said that right. Axel and Sarah are in a new relationship, and TJ comes back into the picture. Sarah pretty much in love with TJ the whole time, but he had moved away. And so now that he's back, she kind of falls back in love with him. Axel's kind of a piece of shit, and there's a little bit of a rivalry going on. And ultimately, at the end of the movie, wouldn't you know, Axel turns out to be the killer who's dressed in all of this pickaxe getup, minor 49er style. And it's Sarah and TJ who are in the finale, duking it off against him. And I will say, the reveal is kind of cool, I guess. It surprised me, but there's this like really, really brief, like 15-second little like slideshow to try and explain why Axel is the killer. Like, there's a flashback. So basically, Axel's father was killed by Harry Warden, and Axel happened to be like in the room when he saw Harry Warden kill him, and it traumatized him and so on and so forth. And so that's, I guess, what inspired him to become the killer. It's a little thrown together, I would say, but I appreciate the effort to throw a nice little twist on there. But yeah, there's a little bit of a struggle. I'm not a huge fan of the ending because there was no sequel to this movie, although I really was surprised. I feel like there should have at least been one or two shitty sequels, but there wasn't. But I mean, Axel ends up getting away because there's like some rubble that falls on them. Shocker. Like the tunnel collapses. And while the police are like scrambling to try and get to this scene after all these fucking people have died, as soon as they get there, Axel like chops off part of his leg or his arm, I guess, and then just runs into the mine that has kind of been sealed off, and it just ends with him like laughing and screaming and just being a fucking, you know, psychotic maniac who just killed all these people, and that's how it ends. So you don't actually get to see Axel die, but it's kind of interesting, right? Because when everybody talks about this movie, they always render it as Harry Warden being the killer and not Axel, which is kind of interesting. Now, maybe was Axel Harry Warden the whole time? Was this, you know, some sort of crazy hallucination or something? I don't fucking know. The ending is, it's kind of a mess, you know? And ultimately, I think this movie is got the right premise, but the execution is kind of spotty. And I don't think it's entirely the movie's part. You know, a slasher movie is usually crutched and heavily aided by a good killer and good kills. And I do appreciate the killer, and I think this movie does have good kills, but I just can't really see it, you know? The characters themselves are fine. It's nothing special. My favorite character was William Howard Taft, and it's honestly mainly because he has a pretty hot girlfriend who's low-key kind of out of his league, so he's a fucking champion for that. But it's mainly because he has a really cool mustache. But I do really like the setting, and I do really like the killer. Everything else, though, you can kind of, you know, take it or leave it. It's nothing that special. You know, I would recommend this movie to horror fans because, you know, it's a cult classic, and I can understand why people really love it. The killer is really unique. The setting is really unique, and I think, you know, if you are a horror fan, especially if you're a slasher fan, I'm sure there's a lot you can enjoy, and there was a decent amount of stuff for me to enjoy here as well. However, you know, I don't think I would recommend it to like friends or you know, even really casual film fans, just because they would probably just assume it's kind of a cheap and just novelty, low quality slasher movie from the 80s. And I mean, that's true. And it is a Canadian slasher, so it's not quite as conventional as some of the others, but you know, I don't know. They kept throwing the Moosehead beer in there. That was something I noticed. Like, and it's like this big Canadian this big Canadian beer or whatever, but like that was just something that stuck out to me. For whatever reason, but I don't know. I definitely, I can't give it a negative review. I can't give it like 2 out of 5, but I'm gonna give it 2.5 out of 5 just because it's got its moments, but at the end of the day, I don't know if I'd really want to watch it again. If somebody wanted to watch it with me, I think I would, but I don't think I'm gonna seek it out on my own and give it a rewatch. I am pretty shocked that it doesn't have any sequels though. So I feel like it was good enough to elicit a few more movies in the franchise, but it didn't. However, I just don't know if I would enjoy it enough to watch it again. I don't know. Maybe. It's okay. 2.5 out of 5.